Hello and welcome back. Today we look at all of the UK's serial killers. The definition is a person who takes multiple lives in a series of 3 or more, often with no apparent motive, following a characteristic and having predictable behaviour patterns. Some in this video will be very well known and maybe some you won't be aware of. I won't be covering the unidentified such as Jack the Ripper, as I'll be talking about this topic in a separate video. The newest person to be added onto this list is Lucy Letby, and the oldest case is of Amelia Dyer, who also took the most lives. And Amelia Dyer is who we are going to be starting off with today. So let's get into the crimes of Amelia Dyer. Amelia Dyer is also known as Amelia Hobley. She was born in 1837 in Bristol. She married George Thompson and then trained to be a nurse. She made friends with a midwife named Ellen Dane, and from Ellen she learned an easier way to earn a living, to use her home to provide lodgings for young women who had conceived illegitimately. She then would farm off the children for adoption. Ellen Dane soon fled to America when authorities started to ask questions. In the Victorian period, there was a law called the Poor Law Amendment Act, which removed any financial obligation from the fathers of illegitimate children. Illegitimate children, or being a single-parent household, were highly judged in this era. This is what led to the practice of baby farming. Amelia acted as an adoption agent in return for regular payments or a one-off fee. Amelia's elderly husband, George Thompson, passed away in 1869, and Amelia used baby farming for some income. She advertised her business as a nurse. She would adopt a baby in return for a one-off payment and adequate clothing for the child. She would have meetings with the clients and assured them that she was respectable and she would provide a safe and loving home for the child. At some point she wanted the majority of the money and realised the expense of a child and the inconvenience. So she let them pass away to pocket most or all of the fee. In 1879, the authorities took an interest in her after a doctor was suspicious about the number of children who had passed away in her care. Instead of being convicted, she was sentenced to 6 months hard labour. She was released and attempted to resume her nursing career. She had lots of spells in mental hospitals due to her instability. She then became addicted to alcohol and other substances. After her nursing didn't go to plan, she returned to baby farming. She didn't involve doctors to issue death certificates and began doing it herself. She would come under suspicion but moved from different cities. She used many different names over the years. She settled in Reading. In 1896, a package was retrieved from the Thames at Reading by a bargeman. The package contained Helena Fry, a baby girl. The police in Reading analysed the packaging and found a name, Mrs. Thomas, and an address. This led the police to Amelia Dyer, although they didn't have strong enough evidence. They gained additional evidence from Bristol police as well as witnesses. They put Amelia Dyer's home under surveillance and used a young woman as a decoy, hoping she'd be able to secure a meeting with Amelia Dyer to discuss her services. On Good Friday of the same year, the police raided her home and found lots of evidence, including telegrams regarding adoption arrangements, pawn tickets, children's clothing, receipts for advertisements, and letters from mothers inquiring about the well-being of their children. On the 4th of April, she was arrested and charged. She appeared at the Old Bailey on the 22nd of May 1896. She pled guilty to taking the life of one infant, that of Doris Marmon. The only defence she offered was insanity, because she had been twice committed to asylums in Bristol. At the trial, it was discovered she had nearly been caught on several occasions. It took only 4.5 minutes and the jury found her guilty. She spent 3 weeks in a condemned cell. She filled books with her last true and only confessions. She was sentenced to death. This happened on the 10th of June 1896. While on the scaffold, she was asked if she had anything to say. She said, "I have nothing to say." Although she was only convicted of taking the life of one baby girl, 6 more infants were linked to her. It's believed that she has taken as many as 400 infants' lives. Case number 2 is of Stephen Griffiths. He was born on the 24th of December 1969 in Yorkshire. He was a postgraduate student of criminology. On the 22nd of June 2009, 43-year-old Susan Rushworth disappeared. On the 26th of April 2010, 31-year-old Shelley Armitage disappeared. And on the 21st of May 2010, 36-year-old Suzanne Blamires also disappeared. They were all workers based in Bradford. Suzanne was found in the River Aire. Other tissue was found and it was established to belong to Shelley Armitage. Suzanne Rushworth has never been found. A huge investigation, obviously, was already launched. They asked for eyewitnesses. They also monitored the areas that the 3 women worked in at night. A breakthrough came in the investigation where a caretaker for a block of flats was looking over the CCTV and saw something disturbing. He later then reported it to the police. In the footage, you see Suzanne running through the hallway trying to escape him. You also then see her being recaptured before Stephen Griffiths looks at the camera and puts his middle finger up. He was soon arrested and charged. While talking to detectives, he boasted of his crimes. He had an obsession with serial killers, which was part of the reason he also took up criminology. He also told police, "I've taken a lot more lives than Suzanne. I've taken loads. Peter Sutcliffe came a cropper in Sheffield. So did I, but at least I got out of the city." On the 21st of December 2010, he pled guilty to all 3. He was handed a whole life sentence. While in Wakefield prison, he's attempted to take his own life on many occasions, and in 2011 he went on a 120-day hunger strike. He remains in Wakefield prison and is 54 years old. Mentioned, Peter Sutcliffe is who we move on to next. Peter Sutcliffe is also known as the Yorkshire Ripper. He was born on the 2nd of June 1946. He had a good relationship with his mum, but his father, John Sutcliffe, was a heavy drinker. Peter Sutcliffe and his siblings were given harsh punishments by their father. At a very young age, he grew an obsession with voyeurism. He spent a lot of time looking at men seeking services in the night. He left school and had lots of different jobs. He worked at the cemetery. This is reported to be one of his favourite jobs. He enjoyed it so much, he would offer to do lots of overtime. After this, he got a job for Clark Holdings Limited on Canal Road in Bradford as a driver. On August 10th, 1974, he married his wife, Sonia. She was a teacher. In 1969, he assaulted 1 woman. The police visited Peter Sutcliffe's home and told him he was very lucky as the woman did not want to press charges. In 1975, he attacked 3 other women. One of the women said that her attacker had a Yorkshire accent, but as the assault happened in Halifax, this was ignored by the police. On the 30th of October 1975, Wilma McCann was walking near the Prince Philip playing fields in Leeds when she was attacked by Peter Sutcliffe. He took her life. An investigation started involving 150 officers of the West Yorkshire Police. There was 11,000 interviews conducted, but they failed to find the culprit. On the 20th of January 1976, Peter Sutcliffe picked up Emily Jackson. He took her to a derelict estate in Leeds. He then took her life. In May that same year, he attacked 20-year-old Marcella Claxton. Luckily, she survived. On the 5th of February 1977, Peter Sutcliffe attacked Irene Richardson after paying for her services. He took her life. Tyre tracks were found at the scene, which gave the police a list of possible vehicles. On the 23rd of April that same year, Sutcliffe took the life of 32-year-old Patricia Atkinson in her flat in Bradford. The police found boot prints at the scene. On the 25th of June 1977, 16-year-old Jane MacDonald had missed the last bus home, so she decided to walk home from her friend's house. Sutcliffe attacked her and took her life. On the 1st of October 1977, he took the life of 20-year-old Jean Jordan in Manchester. The day after the crime, he went back to the scene. He realised that the £5 note that he had given Jean Jordan was traceable, but he was unable to find it. On the 14th of December, he attacked Marilyn Moore in the back of his car in Leeds. She survived. She gave a good description of his car, which had been in the red light areas. Sutcliffe was actually interviewed by the police, but no further investigations were conducted. On the 21st of January 1978, he took the life of 21-year-old Yvonne Pearson. Just over a week later, on the 31st of January, he took the life of Alina Wright, who was 18 years old. On the 16th of May 1978, he took the life of Vera Millward, and in 1979 he took the life of Josephine Whittaker, who was 19 years old. A taped message was sent to the police force, taunting them. It was also revealed that Peter Sutcliffe had been contacted and interviewed on many other occasions, but no further investigations were done. Because of the taped recording, the police diverted their investigation to a man with a Wearside accent. They also sent 2 letters to the Daily Mirror, signing it with Jack the Ripper. It wasn't until 2005 that the police reopened the Hoxha case. They took DNA from the envelopes and found John Humble. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison in 2006 for perverting the course of justice, for sending the letters and the tape. On the 1st of September 1979, Sutcliffe took the life of Barbara Leach. In 1980, he got pulled over for drunk driving, and while awaiting his trial, he took the life of 47-year-old Margaret Walls on the 20th of August 1980. The £5 note that Peter Sutcliffe thought was traceable was. He was on a list of 300 names in connection with that £5 note, but he was not strongly suspected. On the 17th of November 1980, Peter Sutcliffe took the life of Jacqueline Hill. She was a 20-year-old student at Leeds University. At the end of the year in 1980, Trevor Birdsall told the police he suspected Peter Sutcliffe. Trevor Birdsall was a friend of Peter Sutcliffe's and was also a getaway driver for an assault that happened in 1969. Sutcliffe had already been questioned by the police on 9 separate occasions in connection with the Ripper inquiry team. On the 2nd of January 1981, he was pulled over by the police with 24-year-old Olivia Reevers near South Yorkshire. A police check was conducted and it revealed that his car had false number plates. He was arrested and taken to a police station in West Yorkshire. The next day, the sergeant went back to where he was pulled over. They found behind an oil storage tank a hammer, a knife and rope. The police got a search warrant for his home and brought his wife Sonia in for questioning. On the 4th of January 1981, he admitted that he was the Yorkshire Ripper. He calmly described the attacks and the lives he had taken. He claimed God had told him to take the lives of the women. He said the women were littering the streets, their filth. I was just cleaning up the place a bit. Sutcliffe only displayed regret when talking about taking the life of Jane MacDonald, who was the youngest of the victims. At his trial, he pleaded not guilty to taking the lives of 13 women, but guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. He said it was God's will, and he heard voices that ordered him to take their lives. He pleaded guilty to 7 charges of attempted. Psychiatrists diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia. The The jury rejected evidence of the 4 psychiatrists who gave a testimony that Sutcliffe had paranoid schizophrenia. This may have been influenced by evidence of a prison officer who heard Sutcliffe say to his wife, if he convinced people he was mad, he might get just 10 years in a loony bin. He was found guilty of all charges. He was handed a whole life order. He first started his sentence in Parkhurst Prison in 1981. Despite being found sane at his trial, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. He was sent to Broadmoor Hospital in 1984, and in 1994 his wife divorced him. In 1996 he was attacked by another inmate at Broadmoor Hospital, and in 1997 he was attacked again. He lost the vision in his left eye. In 2004 his father passed away, and in 2005 he was allowed to visit the place where his father's ashes had been scattered. On the 22nd of December 2007 he was attacked again. In 2009 he was moved out of Broadmoor Hospital. He went to Wakefield Prison. By 2020 he was in Franklin Prison. He passed away at the age of 74 on the 13th of November 2020. Now we move on to number 4, Harold Shipman. Harold Shipman, who was reported to be a good friend to Peter Sutcliffe while they were both inside. Harold Shipman was born on the 14th of January 1946 in Nottingham. He married his wife Primrose in 1966 and they had 4 children. He became a GP, a general practitioner. The following year he got his medical licence. He was caught forging prescriptions for his own use. He was fined £600. After this he continued working as a GP in Hyde. He established his own surgery at 21 Market Street in 1993. He was a well-respected member of the community. I previously covered him and I had a comment from a subscriber how she knew of him as a child and how well respected he was, and I found that very interesting. In 1998, Dr. Linda Reynolds contacted the coroner for the South Manchester district. She complained to him about the high death rate among Shipman's patients. On the 17th of April of that year, police were unable to find evidence to bring charges and closed the investigation. After this, he actually took the life of 3 more elderly patients. Taxi driver John Shaw took a lot of elderly customers to and from the hospital. He contacted the police saying he suspected Shipman of taking the lives of 21 patients. As he took the customers, they were in good health and passed away while in Shipman's care. His last victim was Kathleen Grundy. She was a former mayor of Hyde. She was found on the 24th of June 1998 at her home. Her daughter, solicitor Angela Woodruff, became concerned when seeing her mother's will. $386,000 was left to Shipman. An investigation started and they found traces of diamorphine. Shipman told police that Grundy was an addict. He showed them comments he had wrote in his medical journal. However, when the police investigated further, it showed that the entries were written after she had passed away. He was arrested on the 7th of September 1998. His trial began in 1999. He was charged with taking the lives of 15 elderly women between 1995 and 1998. On the 31st of January 2000, he was found guilty of all 15 counts and 1 count of forgery for Grundy's will. Shipman denied all charges. He disputed the scientific evidence against him. He never said anything in the public about his actions, and his wife Primrose maintained that he was not guilty even after he was convicted. At 6:20 a.m. on the 13th of January 2004, Harold Shipman took his own life at Wakefield Prison. It was reported that he told a probation officer that he was considering taking his life to make sure his wife's financial security was okay. He was stripped from the National Health Service pension. His wife, Primrose Shipman, received a full NHS pension. She would not have been entitled to it if he had lived past the age of 60. Case number 5, Paul Brumett. Paul Brumett had a long criminal history. In July 1979, he had an argument with his girlfriend, who was 16 years old. In his anger, he went on a rampage. He took the life of 59-year-old shopkeeper Sidney Samuel in Essex. Afterwards, still in his rage, he got on a ferry and ended up in Denmark. Not long after he arrived, he took the life of 40-year-old bus driver Teddy Lutstrap. He was caught and returned to England. His trial started at the Old Bailey in August 1980. He pleaded guilty to 2 counts of manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. The judge recognised that he suffered from severe psychiatric disorders, but he was still sentenced to 3 life sentences. He remained in prison until 1994. Psychiatrists declared that he no longer posed a threat to society and he was released. His bail conditions were that he would be employed by Dudley Council as an assistant gardener under the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act. He had to be strictly supervised and had to spend 6 months at a hostel before he could be allowed on full release. He visited Dudley's red light district. His probation officer had no idea. On the 7th of February 1999, he picked up 19-year-old Marcella Ann Davis. While the investigation began, he continued to pick up lots of workers, many of whom he arred. In 1999, he was arrested on suspicion of taking the life of Marcella Davis. He refused to cooperate, but then he finally admitted to taking her life. He went to trial and was convicted of taking the life of Marcella Davis. He also was convicted of arring 2 other women. He was given 3 additional life sentences. 6. Anthony Hardy. Anthony Hardy was born on the 31st of May 1951 in Burton-upon-Trent. Hardy married and had 3 sons and 1 daughter. He was arrested in 1982 for attempting to take his wife's life, but the charges were dropped. In 1986, his wife Judith divorced him. After divorce, he spent his time in hospitals and was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. He was treated in many hospitals across London. In January 2002, the police were called to the block of flats where Hardy lived. The neighbour complained that someone had vandalised her front door and said it was Hardy. They entered Hardy's flat and found Sally White, who was 38 years old, with her life taken. It was concluded that Sally White passed away from a heart attack. He pled guilty to criminal damage and was sent to a psychiatric hospital. He remained there until 2002. On the 30th of December 2002, a homeless person found Elizabeth Flad, who was 29 years old, and Bridget McLennan, who was 34 years old. Hardy was arrested. He went on the run, but the police found him at a hospital. A fight happened, but they managed to arrest him. They searched around his flat for evidence. They found old bloodstains and other items of evidence. He replied no comment to every question asked. He was charged with taking the lives of the 2 women. At his trial in November 2003, he changed his plea to guilty on all 3 counts and was sentenced to life imprisonment. In May 2010, he was handed a whole life tariff. He passed away of pneumonia in Franklin Prison at the age of 69 on the 25th of November 2020. Number 7. Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. In January 1961, the pair met. Myra Hindley joined Millwards as a typist and became infatuated with Brady, who worked there. They began dating and Myra Hindley became immersed with Ian Brady's ideologies. In 1963, Ian Brady started to talk about committing the perfect crime. On the 12th of July 1963, they took the life of 16-year-old Pauline Reed. On the 23rd of November of the same year, they lured John Kilbride away from a market and took his life. On the 16th of June 1964, they took Keith Bennett's life, who was also 12 years old. On Boxing Day in 1964, they lured 10-year-old Leslie Ann Downey from a funfair and took her life. On the 6th of October 1965, they went to Manchester Central Railway Station and waited to select a victim. That victim was 17-year-old Edward Evans, who was an apprentice engineer. They took his life. They brought Edward Evans back to their home before taking his life. They then invited their brother-in-law over to their home. He was shocked at what he witnessed, but agreed to come back the next morning and help Brady take Edward Evans to the moors. Instead, he phoned the police and told them what he had witnessed. They were both arrested and the police searched the home. They found photographs taken by Brady, which helped them identify where the missing children were on the moor. At their trial, they both entered pleas of not guilty of taking the lives of the children. They were both found guilty of all crimes. Keith Bennett has never been found. Ian Brady passed away on the 15th of May 2017. On the 15th of November 2002, Myra Hindley passed away at the age of 60. 8. Kenneth Erskine. Kenneth Erskine was born on the 1st of July 1963 in Hammersmith. During his childhood, he was abandoned by his parents and went to various special schools. It was reported that he was aggressive to his peers, and he eventually became homeless. He began robbing homes and establishments. He served some time in Feltham prison for this. Robbing the homes was just the start, and it became more violent. On the 9th of April 1986, he entered the home of Nancy Ems, who was 78 years old. He robbed her home and took her life. On the 9th of June 1986, he entered Janet Cockett's home, who was 67 years old. Again, he robbed the home and took her life. On the 28th of June 1986, he went into a residential home and took the life of two men, Valentine Gleam, who was 84, and Zibnu Zabwa, who was 94 years old. Both men were essayed and had their lives taken. He then went to Islington and took the life of 84-year-old William Carman. He stole money from Carman's flat. He then entered a bedsit in Stockwell and took the life of 74-year-old William Downs. On the 22nd of July 1986, he entered the home of Florence Tisdale, who was 83 years old and lived in Fulham. He took her life. Erskine was arrested on the 28th of July 1986 after 74-year-old Fred Pretence said that Erskine had tried to take his life. Because of his prior convictions, he was already on the police database. Fingerprints and photographs were on the police record, and he was identified to have matched from the scenes of the crime. He was convicted and found guilty of all 7. He is suspected of taking the lives of 4 other elderly people. 9. Beverley Allitt. Beverley Allitt was born on the 4th of October 1968 in Lincolnshire. She's also known as the Angel of Death. Allitt was a nurse and gave large doses of insulin. She attacked 13 children, and 4 of those children passed away over a 59-day period. Other medical staff at the hospital became suspicious and contacted the police. The police found that Allitt was the only nurse on duty for all of the attacks on children and had access to the drugs used. She was charged with 4 counts and 11 counts of attempted, as well as 11 counts of causing grievous bodily harm. She entered pleas of not guilty to all charges. On the 28th of May 1993, she was found guilty on each charge and sentenced to 13 terms of life imprisonment. Her minimum term was 30 years. She served this term in Rampton Secure Hospital. On the 3rd of October 2023, it was reported that she was appearing before a mental health tribunal to be assessed for a potential transfer to a mainstream prison. If this transfer happens, she can be granted parole within 6 months. 10. Graham Young, also known as the teacup poisoner. Graham Young was born on the 7th of September 1947 in Middlesex. He became obsessed with poisons from a very early age and started poisoning the food and drink of relatives and school friends. He was caught when a teacher became suspicious and contacted the police. He pled guilty to 3 non-fatal poisoning and at the age of 14 was detained at Broadmoor Hospital. He was released and soon got a job at a factory. He then began poisoning his colleagues. 2 of them passed away and several had critical illnesses. He was convicted on 2 counts and 2 counts of attempted in 1972. He was handed a life sentence. He also admitted to poisoning his stepmother, who passed away. He spent his life sentence serving at Parkhurst Prison. Young passed away in his cell in Parkhurst Prison on the 1st of August 1990, 1 month before his 43rd birthday. Number 11. Stephen Akinmurele was born on the 16th of March 1978 in Nigeria. His father was Nigerian and his mother was British. Sometime in the 80s, he moved back to the UK with his mother, first to the Isle of Man and then making his way to Blackpool. In later life, he worked as a barman. His parents had split up, and while in the UK, he was brought up by his grandmother, who was very strict. Professionals believe this is where his hatred for elderly people came from. Before moving to Blackpool, he took the lives of 2 people. Dorothy Harris, who was 68 years old, had her life taken in February 1996, and Marjorie Ashton, who was 72 years old, had her life taken in May 1995. While in Blackpool, on the 30th of October 1998, he took the lives of Eric Boardman, who was aged 77, and his wife Joan Boardman, who was 74. Fingerprints were left at the scene and he was arrested. Once arrested, he confessed to taking the life of 3 more people. He said in November 1998 he took the life of Jemima Cargill, who was 75 years old. She was his landlady, and it was noted that she had passed away from a flat fire. He also confessed to taking the lives of the 2 in the Isle of Man. Although included in this video, he's actually only a suspected serial killer because he never went on trial. He took his own life in Manchester Prison in August 1999, just a couple of weeks before his trial. He left a note saying, "I know it's not right always thinking like this, but it's always on my mind. I can't help the way I feel. What I did was wrong. I know that and I feel for them, but it doesn't mean I won't do it again. I'll keep on having this feeling. I'm going mad because I can't take any more of this, and that's why I'm saying goodbye." He was 21 years old. 12. Levi Bellfield. Levi Bellfield was born in London on the 17th of May 1968. Police thought Marsha McDonnell was his first victim, but she wasn't. Millie Dowler was. She was a 13-year-old girl who went missing, leaving Walton-on-Thames railway station in March 2002. She was found 6 months later. Surrey Police submitted evidence to the Crown Prosecution Service, and it wasn't until the 30th of March 2010 that Bellfield was charged with kidnapping and taking the life of Millie Dowler. He was also charged with attempting to kidnap 12-year-old Rachel Cowles in the same year of 2002. Marsha McDonnell was 19 years old when she was attacked near her home in Hampton. In February 2003, She had just got off the bus. She passed away in hospital. Bellfield sold his car for $1,500 just a few days after taking her life. 1 year later, Kate Sheedy, who was 18 years old, was crossing the road and was deliberately run over. She survived, thankfully. She gave evidence against Bellfield when he was tried for attempting to take her life. She described the car after the attack, which helped the police. Amelia Dyer was 22 years old. She was from France and was studying in the UK. She was found in Twickenham Green on the 19th of August 2004. She passed away in hospital the same night. CCTV and statements given from victims who survived helped the police arrest Levi Bellfield. He was found guilty of 2 murders and 1 attempted murder in February 2008. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a whole life order. He was not in court to hear his sentence as he refused to attend, saying that it was an unfair press coverage. He is 56 years old and remains in Franklin Prison. 13. Stephen Wright. Stephen Wright was born on the 24th of April 1958 in Norfolk. Stephen Wright had many jobs. He was in the Navy as a chef, he was a barman, he was a bouncer, but his last job was a truck driver. Before his arrest, he only had 1 conviction, and that's of theft. That was due to his gambling, as well as his addiction to alcohol. Stephen Wright had always used ladies of the night. He had done so since he was in the Navy. On the 2nd of December 2006, 25-year-old Gemma Adams was found. Just a week later, Gemma Adams' friend Tanya Nicol was also found. She was reported missing from the 30th of October. On the 10th of December, 24-year-old Anelia Alderton was found. She was also pregnant. The police made a statement telling women to stay away from the red light district of Ipswich. 2 other women were then found. The police confirmed on the 14th of December. One was 24-year-old Paula Clennell. She had been reported missing on the 10th of December and was last seen in Ipswich. 1 day later, they confirmed the other lady found was 29-year-old Annette Nichols, who was reported missing on the 5th of December. The police linked the crimes together and a massive investigation started. They revealed that a total of 7,300 telephone calls had been made to police regarding the investigation. DNA and fibre evidence linked Steve Wright to all 5 victims. He was found guilty of all 5 and handed a whole life tariff. In May of this year, he was also charged with taking the life of 17-year-old Victoria Hall in 1999. The 66-year-old remains in prison. Case number 14. This case is one I've covered frequently on this channel, so I'll only be covering briefly. Rose and Fred West. Rose and Fred West were a married couple who took the lives of at least 9 women between 1973 and 1987. One of those included her 8-year-old stepdaughter, Charmaine West. The majority of their crimes took place at their house in Gloucestershire. In August 1992, Fred West was arrested. He was accused of hurting his 13-year-old daughter. Rose was also arrested for child cruelty. All 5 of the West's younger children were removed and taken to foster homes, but this rattled the police, as they did not know where Heather West was. She had not been seen since 1987. Remains were found at their home, and both were arrested. At their trial, Rose denied taking the lives of any of the victims and said that her husband, Fred West, had committed the acts on his own. Before their trial took place, Fred West took his own life In his cell, he left a note to Rose West. Rose West was found guilty of taking the lives of 10 young girls. She was handed life imprisonment and later then given a whole life tariff. She appealed her sentence 3 times, but all were dismissed. The 70-year-old remains behind bars. 15. Peter Bryan. Peter Bryan was born on the 4th of October 1969 in London. In 1987, the police were called to attend Peter Bryan's flat in East London. He attempted to throw a neighbour from his window. The victim said that the attack was unprovoked and came out of nowhere. Police took no action against Peter Bryan. Peter Bryan contacted police in the 90s, admitting of taking the life of Nisha Sheaf, who was 21 years old and worked as a shop assistant. In 1994, he was sent to Rampton Secure Hospital after doing so. In February 2001, the staff thought that he made brilliant progress in regards to his behaviour and attitude. He was transferred from Rampton in 2001 to the John Howard Centre. He was released into the care of a psychiatrist and social worker. From 2002, he lived in Riverside Hostel in North London. In 2003, psychiatrists noted that progression was still being made and he should be moved to an independent accommodation. In 2004, social workers applied for the transfer so he would have low support accommodation. He was transferred to Newham General Hospital for his safety after there had been allegations that he assaulted a 16-year-old girl. He was discharged from the mental health unit in February 2004. He then took the life of his friend Brian Cherry. He was sent to Broadmoor Hospital awaiting his trial. On the 25th of April, while in Broadmoor, he took the life of patient Richard Loudwell, who was 59 years old. An inquest ruled that Bryan had not been watched properly and had not been adequately assessed by the Broadmoor staff. In 2005, Bryan pleaded guilty at the Old Bailey to 2 manslaughters on the grounds of diminished responsibility. The judge sentenced him to a whole life tariff, but in 2006 this was overturned. He was sentenced to a minimum of 15 years. He has since been in Broadmoor Hospital for treatment. 16. John Straffen. John Straffen was born on the 27th of February 1930 in Hampshire. He took the life of 2 young girls in 1951. He was found unfit to plead at trial and he was sent to Broadmoor Hospital for treatment. He escaped from Broadmoor in 1952. He went to a nearby town and took the life of a child. He was then convicted and sentenced to death. This was reprieved because of his mental state, and he had his sentence changed to life imprisonment. He remained in prison until his death, after 55 years, 3 months and 26 days. He passed away on the 19th of November 2007 at the age of 77. Number 17. David Burgess. Yolande Waddington worked at the Oakwood farm in Berkshire. On the 28th of October 1966, she left the farm for a postbox to post a letter to her boyfriend. This should have taken her around 15 to 20 minutes. While she was in the village, she visited the Six Bells pub to buy some cigarettes, and this was the last time she was seen. On the 30th of October, 2 farm workers found stained clothes. She was found just a short distance away. In November 1966, it was one of the first ever mass blood tests in the UK. Every male in Beanham, the town where the crime occurred, aged between 16 and 50, was invited to give a sample of his blood. 200 men were tested and the samples were examined, but no matches were found. Jeanette Wigmore and Jacqueline Williams were friends. They were both aged 9. And on the 17th of April 1967, they both went out on their bicycles after school. They were seen by Jeanette Wigmore's father around the lane at the back of their house. This was the last time the two girls were seen. Both girls were found around 100 yards away. The police started to interview many people, and it was established that two brothers, David Burgess and John Burgess, were working around the Fisher's gravel pit around the time the two young girls had their lives taken. John Burgess told police that after their colleagues had left at around 6 p.m, his brother, David Burgess, had gone across the lane to check some rabbit snares near Blake's gravel pit. He returned around 10 to 20 minutes later, and the brothers left work at 6:45 and then went home. Both brothers were asked to hand in the clothes they wore on the day, including their shoes. DNA was found on David Burgess's right boot, which he had been wearing on the day. This, along with the statement by his brother, led the police to charge him with taking the life on the 7th of May 1967. On the 21st of July 1967, he was found guilty of taking the lives of the two young girls. He was given 2 life sentences. Yolandi Waddington's case was reopened in 1998 and was re-examined using new forensic techniques. It took until 2010 to link David Burgess to this case. He was charged with taking her life on the 15th of November 2011. 18. John Childs. In June 1978, Childs was arrested for bank and security van robberies. A year later, he confessed to having taken the life of Detective Chief Superintendent Frank Cater in June 1979. The police investigated him further, and it was established he was a contract killer. He was charged with taking the lives of 6 people: Terry Eve, Robert Brown, George Brett, Terry Brett, Frederick Freddie Sherwood, and Ronald Andrews. These crimes took place between 1974 and 1978. None of the victims have ever been found. He was found guilty in 1979 and handed 6 life sentences. He remains in prison. Case 19. Stephen Port. Stephen Port was born in Southend-on-Sea on the 22nd of February 1975. When he was younger, he was described as being a bit weird, as well as being a bit of a loner. He trained to be a chef, and in his mid-20s he came out as gay. He lived with his parents until his early 30s and then got a flat in Barking in London. He used a lot of social networks, mainly Grindr, to meet with people for hookups, but this is also the platform he used to meet his victims. Port lied on his profile to make himself more appealing. He said that he went to Oxford University, and on another site he said he was part of the Royal Mail. He also said that he worked as a special needs teacher. When his victims were targeted, he put GHB in their drinks. He then arred them and took their lives, all while inside his flat in Barking. He took the life of 23-year-old Anthony Walgate on the 17th of June 2014. He then placed him outside of the flat. He made an anonymous call for an ambulance, and before 8 a.m, he was found. He was interviewed by the police but changed his story many times. He was actually convicted of perverting the course of justice in 2015 and was sentenced to 8 months, but was released and electronically tagged. There was evidence linking Port to Anthony Walgate, the fact that he was found outside his flat, as well as them communicating via social media. Within a year, he took the lives of 3 more men he met: Gabriel Cavari, who was 24 years old, Daniel Whitworth, who was 21 years old, and Jack Taylor, who was 25. All 3 were found near to a graveyard in Barking. Stephen Port left a note on Daniel Whitworth's body, saying that he took his own life and took the life of Gabriel Cavari. Regardless of the MO and the location, the police did not link all three together. The family of Daniel Whitworth also said that was not his handwriting left in the note. After a lot of pressure, the police decided to look at CCTV images. They released the CCTV images, and 2 days later, Stephen Port was identified and arrested. He was found guilty of taking the lives of Anthony Walgate, Gabriel Cavari, Daniel Whitworth and Jack Taylor. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a whole life order. He is currently in Belmarsh Prison. Joanna Dennehy is who we're looking at next. This will only be a brief discussion, as I have covered her in more detail in previous videos. Joanna Dennehy was born in August 1982 in St Albans. She decided that she wanted to take the lives of men, but stated she did not want to take the lives of children or women. In Peterborough in 2013, in the month of March, she took the lives of 3 men, her landlord, her boyfriend and her flatmate. She then attacked 2 random men. Both survived. Speaking to a psychiatrist, she said she found taking the lives of men like entertainment, and after she had committed her first crime, she got a taste for it. In November 2013, Dennehy pleaded guilty to taking the lives of the 3 men and attempting to take the lives of the other 2. She was diagnosed with psychopathic, antisocial and borderline personality disorders. She was handed a whole life order. Number 21. Jonathan Balls. Jonathan Balls was born in 1769 in Norfolk. He was accused of poisoning at least 23 people, most of them being his family, between 1824 to 1845. He never went on trial, as he took his own life before an investigation had been launched. It's said that his motivation was money. Once the family member had passed away, he would receive their money and items. 22. George Chapman. George Chapman was born on the 14th of December 1865 in Poland. Chapman's victims were his mistresses. He would enter in a false marriage with them, take money or invest in businesses, and then take their lives by poisoning. The life of Mary Spink in December 1897, Bessie Taylor in 1901, and Maud Marsh in October 1902. It's unclear what his motivations were. He received money from one victim, but nothing from the other 2, which points to it being psychological. Suspicions were raised, and the 2 women's bodies were exhumed. All 3 were found to have passed away from poisoning. He was charged with taking the life of Maud Marsh. He was sentenced to death. He died at Wandsworth Prison on the 7th of April 1903. 23. John Christie. John Christie was born on the 8th of April 1899 in West Yorkshire. His earliest crimes he was charged with was stealing postal orders, larceny and obtaining money in false pretences. After serving time for his earlier crimes, he remained married but got a job as a police officer in London. Through all of this, he always engaged with ladies of the night, and on the 24th of August 1943 he took the life of Ruth First, who was 21 years old. After this crime he resigned as a police officer. He found a job as a clerk at a radio factory where he met Muriel Eady. On the 7th of October 1944 he invited her back to his flat. He promised a special mixture that could help her with her cold. In 1948, Timothy and Beryl Evans moved into the building of John Christie. In 1949, Timothy Evans reported to the police that he believed his wife was dead. the police searched the building and they found 2 victims, one including John Christie's wife, Geraldine. He was arrested and later confessed, but then took back his confession. He went on trial in 1950 and was found guilty. He was sentenced to death, and this happened in Pentonville Prison on the 9th of March 1950. 24. Gordon Cummings. Gordon Cummings was born on the 18th of February 1914 in North Yorkshire. He was also known as the Blackout Ripper or Wartime Ripper. He took the lives of 4 women and attempted to take the lives of 2 others in London in February 1942. He's also suspected of taking the lives of 2 other women in 1941. He was convicted of taking the life of Evelyn Oatley and was sentenced to death. This happened on the 25th of June 1942 in Wandsworth Prison. 25. Mary Ann Cotton was born on the 31st of October 1983 in Durham. She was only convicted of taking the life of her stepson by poison. Although it's believed that she has taken the lives of 11 of her 13 children and 3 of her 4 husbands for their insurance policies, she was found guilty of poisoning her stepson and sentenced to death. This happened on the 24th of March 1873. Now we move on to the most prolific serial killer of children in modern British crime. 26. Lucy Letby. Lucy Letby was born on the 4th of January 1990. It's said that she had a very difficult birth, and according to friends, she was said to have been very grateful for being alive and was so thankful to the nurses who helped save her life. This is what led her to become a nurse. And this is what she pursued. She gained her degree for nursing from the University of Chester. She did placements at Liverpool Women's Hospital and the Countess of Chester Hospital. She became a registered nurse in 2012 and worked in the neonatal unit of the Countess of Chester Hospital. In 2015, she qualified to work with infants in intensive care, and from this point, that's where she worked, in the Chester Hospital. The unit she worked in would usually only see 2 to 3 deaths a year, but in 2015, 4 young children passed away. A consultant sent his review to the committee of the NHS Foundation Trust. They said they were classed as medication errors. In October 2015, the ward manager conducted her own review. She noted that Lucy Letby was the only staff member consistently present through all of these issues. This review was resisted or ignored. In February 2016, consultants, along with other medical staff, did a further investigation. They determined that the only common factor in all these cases was the presence of Lucy Letby. A meeting took place in 2016, and the team deemed the spike to be coincidental, and no action was taken. On the 24th of June, 2 triplet babies passed away. The medical team phoned the duty executive demanding that Lucy Letby be removed from their unit. They insisted that Lucy Letby was safe to work and that she was happy to take responsibility if anything happened to any more babies under Lucy Letby's care. By this point, 7 babies had passed away, but the hospital decided not to involve the police. Instead, they moved her from clinical duties to the hospital's Risk and Patient Safety Office. This was upheld in January 2017, which determined her removal had been orchestrated by the consultants with no hard evidence. They actually apologised to Lucy Letby and offered her a job at another hospital. In May 2017, Lucy Letby was due to start her placement at Alder Hey Children's Hospital in Liverpool, but consultants asked management to involve the police after receiving advice from the regional neonatal lead. Cheshire Police were contacted and they began to investigate her whole career. In 2018, she was arrested on suspicion of taking the lives of 8 babies and attempting to take the lives of 6 others. She denied all charges against her and said that it was the issue of hospital hygiene and staffing levels. Her trial began on the 10th of October 2022, and by this point she was charged with many more. She pleaded not guilty to 7 counts of taking the lives of children and 15 counts of attempting to take their lives. Lucy Letby was found guilty of the 7 counts on the 18th of August 2023. She was also found guilty of 7 counts of attempting to take the lives of 6 infants. She was sentenced to life imprisonment with a whole life order. Lucy Letby refused to go to her sentencing hearing, meaning that she heard none of the victim impact statements. This sparked Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to announce that the UK government would introduce a law to Parliament that would compel convicted criminals to attend their sentencing hearings by force if necessary, or face the prospect of more time in prison. She remains in Bronzefield Prison. 27. We move on to another female, Mary Ann Britland. She was actually the first woman ever to have her life taken at Strangeway prisons. She was born in 1847 in Bolton. She had 2 daughters of her own, Elizabeth Hannah and Susanna. She worked 2 jobs, a barmaid in the night time and worked in a factory during the day. In 1886 she went to a local chemist, saying that she had mice infest her home. She brought a variation of arsenic. When purchasing any form of poison, you had to sign on a register, and that's what Mary Ann Britland did. In the same year, she poisoned her eldest daughter, Elizabeth Hannah. The doctor noted that Elizabeth Hannah passed away from natural causes. Mary Ann Britland claimed on Elizabeth's life insurance policy and received £10. She then poisoned her husband Thomas. His death was noted as epilepsy, and she again claimed on the life insurance. Mary Britland, throughout her marriage, had been having an affair with her neighbour, who lived opposite her, Thomas Dixon. After Mary Britland's husband passed away, she was invited to stay at the Dixons' household by Thomas Dixon's wife, Mary. Within 10 days, Mary Dixon lost her life. This raised suspicion for the police. Her husband, her daughter, and Mary Dixon all passing away in similar circumstances. Mary Dixon was examined by a pathologist, and it was found that poison was used. Mary Britland then made a full confession to all 3. She was charged with taking their lives. She was sentenced to death, and this happened on the 9th of August 1886. 28. Thomas Cream. Thomas Cream was born in 1850 in Glasgow, Scotland. The Cream family moved to Canada and lived near Quebec. He trained and studied to become a physician and surgeon in London. He gained his qualifications in Edinburgh and then returned to North America. In 1879, he was still in Canada and had his own practice. Catherine Hutchinson Gardner was found with her life taken behind his office. Despite overwhelming evidence and traces of poison in her system, he was never questioned further. He then created a practice in Chicago. In 1881, Daniel Scott passed away at his home from poisoning. Thomas Cream was arrested and handed a life sentence. He was released in 1891. He fled America and returned to London. On the 13th of October 1891, he poisoned Ellen Donworth. Just 15 days later, he took the life of Matilda Clover with the same method. In April 1892, he took the lives of Alice Marsh and Emma Shivel. Cream had wrote letters to chemists trying to blackmail them, preventing them to speak about the poison that they had sold to him. The police arrested him on the 3rd of June 1892, and he was found guilty. This happened on the 15th of November 1892. 29. John Duffy and David McCaughey. Duffy and McCaughey were good friends. They went to school together in North London and remained friends throughout their lives. In 1982, at least 19 women had been odd by 2 men in and around railway stations. The Met Police initiated an urgent investigation and named it Operation Heart. On the 29th of December 1985, Alison Day was walking near Hackney Wick train station. Duffy and McCaughey kidnapped her and then took her life. 15-year-old Marta G. Tomboza was on her bicycle outside her home in Surrey. They kidnapped her and took her life. Just a month later, Anne Locke got off a train at Brookmans Park railway station. She was kidnapped and had her life taken. John Duffy was named as a suspect by the police, as he was charged of the R of his estranged wife. They looked in his house, and a rope linking to one of the victims was found. He also worked on the railway line. John Duffy went on trial in February 1988 and was convicted of taking the lives of 2 and 4 Rs. They knew that he could not commit these crimes by himself, but John Duffy was unwilling to give up the name of David McConaughey. He was given a whole life tariff. While convicted, he spoke with a psychologist and then spoke to police, where he confessed to a number of more Rs. He said he committed the Rs and other crimes with his friend David McCaughey. McCaughey was arrested in February 1999 and DNA proved that he was involved with all of the crimes. He went to trial and was given 3 life sentences. 30. Stephen Greaveson. Stephen Greaveson was born in December 1970 in Sunderland. Between 1990 and 1994, he took the lives of young boys in Sunderland. He took the life of 18-year-old Thomas Kelly in November 1993. On the 4th of February 1994, he took the life of 15-year-old David Hanson. And in 1994, just 20 days later, on the 25th of Feb, he took the life of David Grief. All the boys went to the same school. He was arrested on the 11th of March for attempting to break into the house where David Hanson had lost his life. The police already thought that all victims knew the person who did it and may have gone to the same school. Following an investigation, he was arrested and charged with all 3. He was handed 3 life sentences. While serving his time in prison in June 2004, he wrote a letter to the Victim Liaison Services in which he admitted to taking the life of another boy, 14-year-old Simon Martin, in May 1990. He was convicted and charged on the 24th of October 2013 and handed another life sentence. 31. John Hay. John Hay was born on the 24th of July 1909 in Lincolnshire. by 1936 Hay was living in London. He became a chauffeur to William McSwan. William McSwan owned amusement arcades and was very wealthy. Hay also helped to maintain the machines. He then began to share fraudulent stock shares and was found out. He was charged and received a 4-year prison sentence for fraud. When released, it irritated him that he left victims alive. That meant he was accused and got imprisoned. He looked up French killer Georges Seurat, who used acid. He experimented with field mice and found that it only took 30 minutes for the mice to dissolve. His first victim was his old employer, McSwan. He took his life on the 6th of September 1944. Hay told McSwan's parents that their son had gone into hiding to avoid being called up to military service. He then started living in McSwan's house and collecting rent. His parents became suspicious when the war was over. So John Hay invited them to Scotland, surprising them that their son would be there. He wasn't, and he took their lives. He sold the parents' properties and took all the money. In 1947, Hay pretended to have interest in a house that Archibald and Rose Henderson were selling. This time, Hay had a workshop in Crawley. He invited Archibald Henderson to see his workshop. He then took his life. He then invited Rose Henderson and took her life as well. He forged a letter with their signatures and sold all of their possessions, except for their car and dog, which he kept. On the 18th of February 1949, Hay invited Olive Deacon to his workshop to discuss plans of an idea. By this point, he was pretending to be an engineer. Once she arrived, he took her life. He took all of her valuables. 2 days later, her friend reported her missing. Police soon discovered Hay's record of theft and fraud and searched his workshop. They found evidence linking him to all missing person cases. He was charged. He confessed to the police that he took the lives of the McSwans, the Hendersons, and Olive Deacon. He also said he took the lives of a man and a woman from Eastbourne and a woman from Hammersmith, but these have never been proven to be true. At his trial, he was found guilty on all counts and was sentenced to death. This happened on the 10th of August 1949 in Wandsworth Prison. Number 32. We move on to two women who worked together, Amelia Satch and Annie Walters. There's not a record for Annie Walters, but Amelia Satch was born in Dorset on the 5th of May 1867. She trained in the medical field and was a qualified midwife. Amelia Satch ran a lying-in home in London. A lying-in home was a practice involving long bed rests before and after giving birth for women. Amelia Satch then started to advertise that she would take babies for adoption. The fee was between £25 and £30, but the adoption never happened. Amelia Satch's friend, Annie Walters, would collect the baby after it was born and then take their lives with poison. Annie Walters was renting a place in Islington and her landlord was a police officer. His suspicions were raised. The police started to investigate and evidence was found at the laying house. Lots of clothes from babies. At their trial, they were found guilty. It's unknown the number of victims, but it's believed to be more than 12. They were sentenced to death. This happened on the 3rd of February 1903. They were the first women to be sent to the scaffold at Holloway Prison. It was also the first time it was done as a double. 33. Trevor Hardy. Trevor Hardy is also known as the Beast of Manchester. He was born on the 11th of June 1945 in Manchester. 15-year-old Janet Stewart had her life taken on New Year's Eve in 1974 in North Manchester. Just under a year later, on the 19th of July 1975, Wanda Scala, who was 17 years old, had her life taken. Just a year later, in March 1976, 17-year-old Sharon Mossef was walking home from a staff party when she had her life taken. 23,000 people were stopped and searched by the Manchester police at the time of the investigation. Hardy was originally arrested for Wanda's crime. He started bragging to his younger brother, but he was freed because he had an alibi he arranged with his girlfriend. He also filed his teeth down, which would go against bite marks found. He was reinvestigated, and it was found by police lots of trophies from the crime scene. He was found guilty of taking the lives of the girls. On May 2nd, 1978, he was sentenced to 3 life sentences for a minimum of 30 years. He has served his time at Wakefield Prison and is said to have a good work record. It was confirmed in 2008 that he was actually handed a whole life tariff. On the 25th of September 2012, he passed away. He had spent 35 years in prison and was 67 years old. 34. Colin Ireland. Colin Ireland was born in Dartford, Kent on the 16th of March 1954. Colin Ireland said he was heterosexual, although he frequented gay bars. He had been married twice, but said he pretended to be gay only to befriend his potential victims. Between the 8th of March and the 12th of June 1993, he took the lives of 5 men. He took the life of Peter Walker, who was 45, Christopher Dunn, who was 37, Perry Bradley, who was 35, Andrew Collier, who was 33, and Emmanuel Spiteri, who was 41. CCTV and fingerprints linked him to the crimes. He was charged and confessed. He told police that he had no vendetta against gay men, but picked on them because they were the easiest. He was found guilty of all 5 at his trial and handed 5 life sentences. In December 2006, it was revealed that he was on the Home Office list of prisoners who had been issued with a whole life tariff. He died on the 21st of February 2012 in Wakefield Prison. 35. Ronald Jebson. Ronald Jebson was born in Hertfordshire. At 15, he was convicted of indecent exposure. After this point, he began essaying children. He was friends with Sidney Cook. By 1960, he was an alcoholic. He was unable to hold any job, so he went into the British Army in 1960. But he was discharged following a period of being absent without leave. In 1968, he was convicted of essay of a 6-year-old girl. He was released on the 2nd of March 1970. He was free for just 29 days. Then he kidnapped Susan Blatchford and Gary Hanlon, who were aged 11 and 12 from Essex. He then took their lives. By this point, Jebson was living with his friend Robert Paper. Robert Paper's wife, Maureen Paper, said she felt uneasy with how he was around their 6 children, particularly their 8-year-old daughter, Rosemary Ann. They didn't know his criminal record. An argument happened and he was told to leave. He told the Papers, "I'll do something you'll regret, I'll get even." In June 1974, he lured Rosemary from her school to a field, where he essayed her and took her life. He was arrested the next day and confessed. He was given a life sentence. 2 years later, while serving his time in Wakefield Prison, he confessed to the Babes in the Wood murder. On the 28th of March 2000, he appeared at court. He was found guilty and handed 2 more life sentences. He died on the 17th of April 2015 at the age of 76. Number 36, Colin Norris. Colin Norris was born in Milton, Glasgow on the 12th of February 1976. He worked as a travel agent and then retrained as a nurse. It was reported that as a trainee nurse, Norris refused to work with elderly patients, saying he didn't want to work with that type of person, and he found elderly patients the most challenging. He worked at the University of Hospital in Leeds and Leeds General Infirmary. Suspicions were raised first when Norris predicted that Ethel Hall, one of the patients, would pass away at 5:15 a.m, and that's what happened. A blood sample was taken from Ethel, and it was found that it contained 1,000 units of insulin. The police were then notified. An investigation was launched on Norris. The police would investigate 72 people who had passed away on the ward while Norris was working. It was found that patients were given lethal doses of insulin. He went on trial on the 3rd of March 2008 for taking the lives of 4 women and attempting to take the life of a 5th. He was sentenced to life imprisonment and ordered to serve a minimum term of 30 years. The police believe he has taken up to 6 other patients' lives. 37. Dennis Nilsson. Dennis Nilsson is another case that I've covered in detail in previous videos, so I'm just going to touch on him in this video. He was born in Scotland in 1945, and between 1978 and 1983 he took the lives of at least 12 young boys in London. He was convicted of 6 counts of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder and was sentenced to life imprisonment in November 1983. He was later charged with a whole life tariff in 1994. He was imprisoned in Full Prison in Yorkshire. He passed away on the 10th of May 2018. 38. Theodore Johnson. Theodore Johnson was born in Jamaica in 1954. In 1980, he moved to the UK with his wife Yvonne. Just a year later, he had an argument with his wife Yvonne after she would not let him go to the church for not being dressed well enough. He took her life in their Wolverhampton home. He was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 3 years in prison. 11 years later, he met Yvonne Bennett. They moved in to a flat in North London. They had a 2-year-old daughter. They divorced, and Theodore Johnson started stalking her. He broke into their home in 1993 and took Yvonne Bennett's life. At his trial at the Old Bailey, he claimed that he suffered from depression and a personality disorder. He pleaded guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. He was found guilty and sent to a mental institution. A year later, in September 1994, he was allowed out of the psychiatric ward for the first time on escorted parole, and at mid-1995 he was allowed to spend 2 days at a City and Guilds course on furniture restoration by himself. He met 51-year-old Angela Best. They quickly began a relationship. Johnson was released by a mental health tribunal in October 1997, on condition that he notified the supervising doctors and social workers about any relationship with women he formed. However, he didn't do this. On the 15th of December 2016, Angela Best visited his flat in Islington to help him with an appointment at the Jamaican embassy. He took her life. So, after doing so, he jumped in the train tracks. They visited his home and the police found Angela Best. He was charged and confessed to taking the life of Angela Best. At his trial, he arrived in a wheelchair. He was sentenced to 26 years imprisonment. This concludes our video today. There are some that I haven't mentioned that I'll put in the description below. As always, thanks for watching. Until next time.